The law of entropy, how it governs everything. Imagine yourself having a nice breakfast on a sunny day. You have your peanut butter jam laid out on the golden line plate and a coffee right next to it on the dining table. You take a bite and think of complimenting it with your hot coffee. As soon as you lift up the cup, it slips away from your hands and shatters into a million pieces as the spilled coffee destroys your expensive carpet. Now, if you take a bird's eye view of this incident, nothing new really happens to your sight except little shivers sent to your heart. We see what occurred was just simple physics. Gravity acted, cup fell down, it broke, and the coffee got spilled. But replay this fancy imagination again in your brain. The cup fell down, it touched the floor, but why did it break? Sounds like a silly question, right? You would say because as soon as the cup fell down on the floor, it took a hit because the energy got transferred from the floor to the cup. And the bonds between the atoms broke because of the new addition of energy. But this precise transfer of energy does not really explain the breaking of the cup in the first place. I mean, the transfer of energy could have also taken the other way around. The energy could have been transferred from the cup to the floor, such that the floor gained more energy. And to tell you, by the way, this is not a violation of the laws of physics. They could also work the same in reverse. However, we do not see this happening anywhere. The configuration of energy appears in every cup falling case as such that the cup would always break, always go from an ordered state to a disordered state. Now, the reason behind it is just not specific to this example, but a universal law which governs everything. It goes from explaining why universe is expanding to why problems never stop slapping you in the face. It is the supreme law valid about everything everywhere. It is the law of entropy. So, what the fuck is that? But before we move on, if I go on to ask you, who are you, what would you say? If you are like any other sane person, you would say your name. I am this. But think about it. Are you really your name? If I say I'm Jim Gorgon, well, Jim and Gorgon are just two words made up of 9 letters in total. If I say I'm this physical structure I see in the mirror every morning, but I'm not my body, it is just a well organized flesh arranged on a skeleton. I do not refer to it as am hand, am eyes, am brain, or am body called sick this morning. I say it is my body, my hand, my brain. If I say I'm a male, that's just another way of identifying my biological features. If I say I'm my age is just a number. And the same thing applies to you as well. You are not your name, you are not your body, you are not your age, you are not your gender. If someone makes a clone of you and gives it your name, would it be you? No, right? That would be a duplicate of you, but not you. So we may even go further asking, what are you? And if you are not what you supposed you were, are you even anything? Get the answer to these mind boggling questions by buying our ebook Psychology of You for just $1 through the link in the caption. So now, let's get started. Now, entropy in simple terms means the degree of randomness or the measurement of energy spread out in a system. For example, your precious little phone has a structure wherein energy is consolidated. But if you by chance drop it and it breaks into pieces, energy gets spread out. So we could say that your phone has low entropy when it is in a consolidated state, whereas when it shatters, it has high entropy. The energy stays the same. The only difference is in the first instance, it has been put to an organization, whereas in the second case, we see a state of disorder. Now, this is not it. If you would only care to wear your specs and aid your nearsighted eyes with a floodlight view, you would see that as we go forward in time, things always move from state of order into a state of disorder. Energy always spreads out. Old monuments turn into wastelands with the actions of environment. Ice turns into water when kept at a normal temperature. Dead bodies rot away and get decomposed. A building rusts when left unkempt. The energy remains the same but gets spread out over time. In other words, all the things tend to go from orderly to disorderly. And this is the law of entropy, which is actually the second law of thermodynamics, which says as one goes forward in the time, the net entropy of any isolated or closed system will always increase or at least stay the same. Now, a question might have immediately popped up like a boss for a delay. Why does it happen? Why do things need to go from an orderly state to a disorderly state over time? Now, again, using an analogy of a cup, when a cup comes in contact with a flow, the energy present in the form of energy packets within the bonds of molecules move from atom to atom between the flow and the cup, creating millions of configurations or patterns in which energy could exist at the time of collision. Now, hear me out on this one. What if I say if we pause time at a certain interval during the collision of the cup with the flow, we can also get a configuration of the energy such that floor has more energy packets than the cup, as a result of which the cup would remain in an ordered state and the entropy would actually decrease. You would say that is impossible. Like if this could happen, the hot things will get even hotter when kept alongside cold things, or a candle's flame would actually increase with the action of air. And it simply does not happen. So such a thing might be impossible according to you. But wrong. It is not impossible, but improbable. The thing is, when we keep the energy configurations of floor having more energy with cup having more energy, we find the probability a cup receiving more energy than the floor is just astronomically high than the floor receiving energy from the cup. So high that it just does not happen. It just does not occur in nature. This is because there are almost infinite ways energy could get spread out in the cup and break it than there are ways for it to remain in its original form. Now, if this example was a bit too complicated for you to understand, you can think of it in a way of a Rubik's cube. There are quintillion ways you can unsolve it and randomize it. Some ways to almost solve it, and only one way to completely solve it. So things go from orderly to disorderly not because it is physically impossible, but because it is statistically highly probable. Thus, entropy is a function of a probability which will always occur. So the examples that we have given right now, or we have learned about right now, tells us about how entropy works in the physical domains, like ice to water, law of entropy, phone to pieces, law of entropy, poop to soil, law of entropy again. Now, this may make it seem like entropy is some law that only works for the aspects dealing with physics and chemistry, which people in white coats measure in white labs. So now thinking that your life is not really a part of it in any way would just be a proof of your blindness and poor observation skills. But that's not a problem. That is why neutrally biased is here for you to guide you through the ambiguity of unconsciousness towards the island of awareness. Hence, I will provide you about briefs on how entropy works on a cosmic level, sociological level, and then your level to make the concept of entropy more understandable and relatable. Now, discussing about the cosmic level first, We see that it is a well adopted myth that the universe and its intricate nature is a result of the vast order it establishes. At first, we think of universe as a system, so many planets, suns, galaxies, black holes, all placed in a certain order. However, recent scientific proofs label the universe driving towards higher entropy all the time. In this context, the definition of entropy matches more of an energy spread out phenomenon than a disorderly system. And universe has always had an increasing entropy since the beginning of Big Bang, because it was only after a fraction of seconds after the Big Bang that universe was in its most consolidated state ever. Then what happened, to put the long story short, tensor regions got converted into systems of planets, stars, and galaxies due to gravity, and over time the universe started expanding, which it is still doing. So practically speaking, universe had less entropy yesterday than it has today. It will have more entropy tomorrow than it has as of now. But obviously, there is a limit to the level of entropy the universe can reach. And there would come a time when the universe expands to such an extent where the thermal energy is so spread out that it just wouldn't be able to carry out any functions. And that would be the heat death of the universe, as scientists call it, which, according to predictions, is just 10 years. Oh, sorry. Just 10 to the power of 100 years from today. But what about the human universe? What about the sociological level? So, in societies, we see entropy take place in the form of social entropy. When societies are left without independent institutions to govern and uphold its ideals, they crumble into disorganization and chaos. Such a state of society would only increase more towards further social entropy unless energy is actually expended into putting order. Now, an interesting example of entropy existing in a sociological level could be seen in the Kowloon walled city of Hong Kong, which could be said to be the densest city to ever exist. Now, the story of the city is no less than a line that divides a dystopia from a utopia. 33,000 people lived in just an area of 6.3 acres. Buildings were stacked over each other, and most apartments received no lights. The thing was that this city was officially not a part of Hong Kong and owned by the Chinese. But due to a lack of concern by the Chinese themselves for their own territory, the city literally became the definition of urban chaos. Illegal wiring supplied electricity to all houses. Only four water tanks quenched the thirst of thousands of people, and drug and sex rackets made it their hub. So, disorder became the Kowloon phenomenon. However, we see that there is another aspect to this. The people of Kowloon did restore order over time. They formed schools, charities, associations, shops, and businesses, all of it functioning in just 6.3 acres of land. In fact, it would be an understatement that there was a strong unity among the citizens. But this did not come without effort. So, the Kowloon phenomenon is a great way to understand how social entropy flourishes towards chaos without a higher order, and how difficult it is to restore order again. But more on restoring order later. Now, even after highlighting these many examples, if you still think entropy has no influence over you, then thanks for giving me another chance to prove you wrong. Entropy, in its simplest form, can be understood as the measure of complexities with respect to one's life. And if you observe your life closely, you will find the law of entropy to be valid even here. So when we are a bunch of 2 year olds, life is simple. We don't need to do shit except shitting. So that could be said as a state of low entropy. But as we grow older, go to school, make new friends, and gain experience of the world, our life becomes complicated. We capture beliefs about the world, is from a unique lifestyle. And even after that, the added load of responsibilities, moving up the ladder and reproducing, we encounter all sorts of problems, situations, and obstacles that drive us to even higher entropy. So, in a way, entropy morphs into the Murphy's Law for humans. And the Murphy's Law, if you have heard it, says what could go wrong will go wrong. And that is the reason we find more people leading chaotic lives than living in pristine order. There are more toxic relationships than actually bonded ones. There are more addicts than there are rehabilitees. There are more unhappy, unsatisfied people than there are people who live in contentment. So we now understand that chaos is easy to flourish. But why the heck is order so difficult to maintain or restore? But before answering this exact question, I would like to raise another contradictory argument, and that is if chaos is so easy to flourish and order is so difficult to form, then how do we have life? I mean, don't these bacteria, animals, even we humans, well organized structures represent some sort of an order? So, is the very existence of life some sort of an exception to the law of entropy? Well, the answer is no. In fact, scientists, being scientists, have derived a theory for the origin of life in respect to the entropy of the system. Now, if we only care to notice, we find that life, though it is an ordered system, an ordered structure, it does an extremely good job of increasing further entropy. Like, take an example of the food chain that we see normally in wildlife. Seed from a plant grows into another plant, which is eaten by a deer. A deer is then eaten by a tiger. When tiger dies, the decaying matter is absorbed by bacteria and scavengers. Now, even though the energy is same throughout this whole process, entropy has increased exponentially. So, life does not violate the second law of thermodynamics, but accelerates it. But this is not even it. Recent research suggests that life is in fact a consequence of the law of entropy itself. Now, for this, we need to go back to what we were discussing earlier. Like in a closed system, we see particles moving towards higher disorder and randomness. However, if we tend to supply this closed system with a source of energy, these random particles could actually clump up to form a structure. And in our case, Earth is a closed system which receives energy from the sun. And life is the order formed when the random particles got together. Or, in the words of Jeremy England, the scientist who was behind it, he said that you start with a random clump of atoms, and if you shine light on it for long enough, it should not be so surprising that you get a plant. Now, coming back to our unanswered question, that why is order so difficult to restore and maintain? May it be society, economy, or even in our own lives. So, on an individual level, it is easy to figure out the reason behind why leading a successful, ordered life is tough to lead. Because you need to spend enough energy by taking responsibilities, solving problems, making efforts, following a, a set of principles and guidelines in order to control the entropy of life. However, we must not confuse controlling entropy with reversing the entropy of life, because reversing the entropy of life is just completely different thing, and in the first place, it is just impossible. The thing is, world never stops to create problems that become hurdles in your path, give you dilemma with crises, and throw acid on your self-image. Thus, the only simple way for an individual to grow and restore order in life is not to escape from entropy, but respond to it with action. Now, transitioning from painting order in an individual to order in a society, we reach what I call the order paradox. Now, it could be imagined with an example of cooling a room. So, when we are cooling a room, the entropy of the room reduces. However, the net entropy of the world still increases. Now, this implicates the fact that if we are increasing order in one place, it ends up creating disorder in the other place. History is a good example of this, but the present is the archetype, where the very tools we designed to create order are later used to create disorder. For example, in Stone Age, the stone tools we made to hunt animals were also used to fight other tribes. In the medieval ages, we saw institutions of orders like empires, monarchies created disorder in the lives of the common men. But systems of order really started to be used for further disorder after the Industrial Revolution. During the Industrial Revolution, societies grew exponentially. And this was so because they followed two phases: the phase of discovery, gaining knowledge about the world, and where they discovered the concepts of science, medicine, space, energy, transportation, etc. And the second phase, which followed the phase of discovery, is the phase of invention, where we use the pre existing knowledge we have gathered during the phase of discovery to create steam engines, internet, electricity, light bulbs, and all sorts of things. Now, as we gain information during the phase of discovery, we use these pieces of information for inventions. And it is in the phase of inventions that we see social entropy rising. Because when we have garnered enough resources to make anything, we literally end up making anything and everything. And it is practically the reason why we are in a world where we have medicines to cure cancer and also drugs to give us cancer. We have airplanes to rescue people and airplanes to annihilate people. We have democracies founded on corruption. We can use nuclear energy to generate electricity and also generate deaths. We can use tools of mass creations for making the weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is not to say, nonetheless, that we have never tried to create order. We have, but even though order precedes chaos, it needs to expand its arms to match up to the chaos. Because the thing is, even in the normal world, we see crimes do not occur to violate the laws, but laws are made to control the crimes. Wars do not occur to destroy peace, but peace is made to prevent wars. A room is not made messy so that we can clean it, but a room is cleaned so that we can clear up the mess. And this is why order is so difficult to restore and maintain. Because order can only and has always existed in the domains of chaos. In other words, chaos is the default state of the universe. Order is only artificial and temporary.